Friday, and so it's time for me to upload a new video. And I know that last week I said that I was going to upload a video uh, demonstrating something in pen and ink because it's Inktober and so forth, but I have not been able to concentrate on Inktober this month as in previous years because of some illustration assignments that I got, and I needed to focus on those. So I'm still keeping to my schedule as far as posting a video every Friday, even though I'm posting on Friday. I know this is a little late for Friday, but here it is. And what I'm doing here is I'm demonstrating this exercise. Just a fun exercise. Sometimes I take a reference photo and I just play with it. I know that if you've ever looked for photographs online to help you with a painting or an illustration or so forth, I know one of the frustrating things is that there's never one that exactly fits what we're doing. There's always we try and strive for something that comes close to the reference material that we need, but what we have is even if you shoot your own, what we have to do is use our imagination to fill in the gaps as far as reference is concerned. One of the illustrations that I've done recently was an illustration of a teenager in a room, and I used my son as a model for that teenager. Even though my son looked nothing like the character in the story, I was still able to shoot some pictures of him to use as reference for gesture and lighting, and as far as making it look more like the character in the story, I used my own imagination, of course, trying to find out some different photos that I can use that take me closer to the mark. But I use my imagination to carry me all the way and enable me to finish that illustration. And right here is I'm using this photo, and what I'm trying to do in this exercise is really not adhere to the photo entirely. I'm not trying to slavishly copy it. I am trying to reinterpret it, and without sticking to it, still come up with something that looks like the character. Um, and you know what? You can even take it and go further from there if you want, and just use the photo for whatever whatever information you want to extract from it. But for right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to pick out the things that I think would make this drawing interesting. So I used the photograph to go ahead and extract things, uh, to push stuff, to exaggerate, to minimize, or get rid of altogether whatever information that I don't feel that I need. And so that's what, an illustration like this, or an exercise like this is good for, is to help really use the reference photograph in the right way, where it's just a leaping off point, something that you don't have to rely totally on. There's a long time ago I had a coworker whose dad was a very very famous caricaturist, and he ran a paint group. Him and this other painter ran a paint group in Manhattan, and so my friend took me to meet his dad. His name was David Levine, a great caricaturist, and great watercolorist. And I met him, and it was great. And during that visit, he allowed me to sit with his paint group for that day. And I went ahead and took out my watercolor. I believe I was doing a watercolor, and I sat down with the group and I painted from the model. And I was still in that, and I was still in that mindset of just trying to faithfully copy what's in front of me. Now, the painting, what I was doing came out very, very stiff. And so I can remember Mr. Levine walking behind me and kind of peering over to seeing what I was doing. And he said something that was very useful to me. He didn't say it to me directly, but it was obvious. He said, "You know what? We provide the models. You provide the art." That means that, you know what, you need to look at what's in front of you and don't get into that copier mindset. Don't get into that mindset where all you're doing is trying to faithfully copy what's in front of you. You need to be able to take the information that's in front of you and recreate it on the canvas. Now you can recreate it. You can be as faithful as you want to it, but ultimately, it's your interpretation of how you see things, how you see what's in front of you. You take the information that you have, you take the shapes, you take the values, you take the color, you take that information and it runs through your mind and onto the canvas. Basically, you put down how you evaluated all those things. So and because we're not copiers, we're not even cameras, we're basically, we're artists. So we're trying to communicate it to the world what makes what's in front of us interesting. And there might be bits of information that you want to faithfully put down and show, well, you know what, I find this bit of information interesting. I find this light, and I find this the the cools and the warm colors that I see before me and how they're put together. I've whatever it is, you may find all those things interesting, and they of course are faithful rendition of what you see in front of you, but they're a rendition of what your own eyes capture. We may not all see things the right way. We may not all emphasize the same thing. Someone might emphasize something else, and put that down. But um, all that information adds up to what makes what's before you interesting. So, you know, we're not copiers. So this an exercise like this is just a reminder of that we can take a photo and we can push it and and show what makes it interesting. Or what, if you're an illustrator, you can uh, go beyond it and get the information that you need from it, and let your imagination take over beyond that. There's a great book, and I know it's out of print, but if you can find it on Amazon, it's called Rockwell on Rockwell. And in that book, there's just a small segment, just a single page, where he showed how from one photograph he was able to make many characters. So, and it was just these small little sketches. First, it started out, I believe, where he faithfully rendered the person in the photograph. Then he took that and did a cowboy. Then he took that and did a pirate based on the photograph, where he used that to come up with many different things. And here in the second drawing that is before you right now, I'm pushing it even further. I'm going more into caricature. I changed the shape of his head. I made his nose bigger. I exaggerated different things. There are a lot of things that I could have done with this photograph and not make him into a cowboy. I could have made him into a musketeer. I could have made him into a pirate. I could have made him into so many different things just by changing his hat and using the same information that's there as far as his face is concerned. I could have changed the shape of his nose, uh, um, or the shape of his beard, or the color of his beard, and so forth. There's a number of things that I could have done, but for for the purposes of this video, what I did here was I just pushed the caricature and I exaggerated stuff, and used the same reference material. I've made a different drawing in a different way based on the reference that was in front of me. And so, not not being a slave to to the photograph. There's another artist by the name James Gurney, and he has a book that's a great book that I recommend. It's called Imaginative Realism, and in it he describes the way he goes about in building his paintings. He makes paintings of dinosaurs. He's worked for National Geographic where he had to recreate scenes from ancient civilization and stuff like that, things that you don't no longer see in life, and how he uses maquettes, how he uses different kinds of reference material to recreate these things that no longer exist. And in it he might use like I said, a maquette. He might use a photograph. He might use photographs of that he's taken from the maquette under different lighting conditions, but always, he never slavishly sticks to it. It's a point of reference, and because the reference will take you to as much information as you can, as the present day can describe. We have to fill in the blanks with our imagination, and so our imagination becomes very, very important. Now, these books, if I can find them and leave a link, I will do so. And but I highly recommend them, um, especially in the case of the James Gurney book. I know the Norman Rockwell book you would not be able to find anymore unless you find a used copy. But there's a book, I believe, by the famous artist school where they use some of Rockwell's notes that he was part of that group that taught from there. These famous illustrators. But yeah, you'd find some notes of how they go around building the picture and using reference material. At some point, maybe in some of my videos, it might be a good idea to show some of my other work. I know I had mentioned that before in a previous video, where I can show, that like this is all basically sketches and stuff like that I do on the fly. These videos don't take a whole lot to do. They're basically your type of digital sketchbook thing. I could use color or whatever, and even though they come across as paintings, some of them, they're really basically sketches. But a more finished illustration, a more finished painting, I would give you an idea of the other things that I do as far as putting something together. Um, that might be useful. I know in my previous video where I demonstrated the Rebel watercolor brushes, I showed some of the watercolors that I've done and that I finished, especially trying to show that what that software can do as far as mimicking watercolor. But here, by the way, I'm using Mischief. The reason why I use Mischief for an exercise like this is because there are not a lot of bells and whistles to the software. It's a great software, especially if you're not used to working with digital materials or digital media, and you come from a traditional background, which I do, and a program like Mischief, which doesn't take you too much to the technical side. It's basically very simple digital application. It doesn't have a lot to it. It's great. I mean, because the brushes are great. They mimic a pencil real well, and you can even do nice ink drawings on here digitally. And it's a good jumping off point to, or a jumping in point as far as digital is concerned, to give you an idea of what's it like to work in digital media. So anyway, that's pretty much it. I hope that you might decide to try this exercise. Let me know what you think about it. push your drawings, be imaginative, use reference, but don't be a slave to the reference material. All right. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to my blog. I will be here every Friday. All right. Thank you very much. Bye bye.